Okay, think about this for a second. The strongest, most caustic chemical you might have, like for cleaning grains or maybe making soap. Now, what if I told you that exact kind of chemical is, like the absolute key ingredient in a 500-year-old Christmas tradition? Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, today we are doing a deep dive into lutefisk. Norway's really unusual, definitely polarizing, and let's be honest, chemically intense culinary tradition. We've got sources covering its deep history, the surprising chemistry involved in preserving it, and its complicated cultural life today. So, our mission is to unpack how this dish dried cod, cured in lye of all things, became such a fixture, a cherished staple for Christmas in Scandinavia, and why it still gets such strong reactions, love or total hate.
Yeah, it's fascinating because Lutefisk isn't just some quirky recipe.
Yeah.
It really speaks volumes about Nordic ingenuity.
Mhm.
And maybe more pointedly, it was born out of necessity, real survival stuff. It was an innovation, really,
Mhm.
driven by needing to get through those incredibly harsh medieval Norwegian winters. They had to solve that critical problem.
Well,
How do you preserve protein long term? And they got they're very resourceful, maybe even a bit risky.
okay, right. Let's get into that. Because before the lie, this whole story starts with something called stockfish, turfisk in Norwegian. This is basically unsalted cod. They gut it and then just hang it up to air dry naturally in those super cold, dry winds you get in northern Norway,
Yeah, yeah.
especially around the Lofoten Islands.
Exactly. And air dried here means completely dried out, like rock solid. Turns into this incredibly dense, almost indestructible food source. You couldn't just, toss it in a pot and boil it like fresh fish. Some sources say it was literally like wood. Yeah, people apparently carried small axes or saws just to break off pieces. That hardness really tells you something about the challenge they faced just to make it edible again.
And this stockfish, it wasn't just about getting through winter. It was huge economically.
Absolutely huge. It was the backbone.
Yeah.
From the Viking Age, really. This durable, protein-packed fish fueled massive trade routes. They often called it the bread of the North. And just to give you a sense of the scale,
Yeah.
our sources show that by the 14th century, stockfish made up over 80% of Norway's entire export value.
80%. That's incredible.
It is. I mean, try to imagine one single product driving almost a whole national economy today. Maybe oil in some places. It was that important.
Okay, so you've got this incredibly valuable rock hard fish. It's great for trade, but yeah, that hardness, that's the big problem for actually eating it. Soaking it in water would take forever, right?
Ooh.
Weeks, probably. They needed something faster to rehydrate it and soften up those muscle fibers.
Exactly. And that's where the lye comes in. That's the revolutionary step, the chemical shortcut, if you will. Just soaking it was way too slow. Lye, being a strong alkali, chemically attacks the fish's structure. It speeds up the rehydration like crazy and totally changes the texture.
So what's happening chemically when you hit dried fish protein with lye? Because, like you said, the result isn't just softened fish, it's something else.
It's a really powerful denaturing process. The alkaline solution jacks up the pH massively. This starts breaking down the protein structures, the collagens, any fats left in the dried muscle. It's actually kind of similar to saponification, how lye turns fat into soap.
Ah, okay.
So this chemical reaction basically unravels the fibers. It transforms that hard, jerky-like fish into that, well, translucent, gelatinous form. It gets really pungent, too. That uncanny, lifelike appearance the sources talk about. That's the protein fibers essentially dissolving and swelling up with water.
That's wild. It's like applied chemistry, but from centuries ago. How on earth did they figure out that this dangerous chemical would actually make fish edible? Any ideas?
Well, there are two main theories floating around, and they both come back to where lye originally came from, wood ash.
Right. Wood ash. You mentioned potassium carbonate. So wait, basic wood ash mixed with water gives you lye?
Pretty much, yeah. Wood ash contains potash, potassium carbonate. Mix it with water, and you get a strong alkaline solution. That's your lye. So theory one, the accidental one, it was pretty dramatic. Maybe a warehouse full of stockfish burns down.
Okay.
Then rain mixes with all that ash, soaking the fish, and boom, you've got this accidental chemical cure. And someone, maybe desperate, maybe just curious, tasted it.
Huh. And the second theory?
The second one is more intentional. It suggests cooks deliberately started adding wood ash to the soaking water. They figured out it sped up the softening, tenderized the meat, cut down those weeks of just plain water soaking.
Which one seems more likely? Or is it just impossible to know?
Honestly, the sources are a bit vague. The intentional theory feels more practical maybe for something that became a widespread technique. But, the accidental fire story is definitely more memorable. It pops up in folklore a lot.
Sure.
What really matters, I think, is the ingenuity. They took a common waste product, wood ash, and used it to solve this massive food problem, turning, an edible fish jerky into something festive.
So, grounding this in actual history, when do we first see this written down? A recipe for lye-cured fish.
We can pin it down pretty clearly to the mid-1500s. The earliest solid documentation for lutefisk shows up in 1555. It's in this huge work by Olaus Magnus called Historia de Gentibus Septentrionalibus, History of the Northern Peoples.
Wow, 1555, and he actually wrote down the recipe, lye concentration and everything.
Well, maybe not the exact concentration, but the steps, yes.
Yeah.
He describes soaking the dried stockfish in strong lye, his words, for 2 days.
2 days, a lot.
Oh. Then rinsing it really well in fresh water for another whole day, to get rid of the caustic stuff.
Yeah.
Only then was it ready to be cooked and served, typically with salted butter.
3 days of soaking and rinsing. That's a serious commitment. It really shows how important this food must have been if they went through all that trouble and the risk, frankly.
Absolutely. And that timing, the mid-16th century, helps explain the Christmas connection too.
Ah, the religious angle. Right, how does that fit in?
It ties back to the time before the Protestant Reformation. Before 1536 in Scandinavia, Roman Catholic rules involved fasting. That meant eating fish, not meat, during Advent, the period leading up to Christmas, and on Christmas Eve itself.
Okay, so fish was required eating then.
Right. They ate salted cod or herring too, of course. But lutefisk, because it was preserved but not necessarily heavily salted and lasted so incredibly long, it was kind of perfect for those lean winter months leading up to the big feasts. Its durability cemented its role in the festive season.
Okay, fast forward 500 years. Today, the dish still has that really polarizing reputation you mentioned. People either seem to absolutely revere it or just find it totally detestable. And it comes down to that jelly-like texture and, yeah, the smell. You can't ignore the smell.
Exactly. Which raises a funny question. If it's this ancient cultural thing, how popular is it actually today? And ironically, in Norway itself, sources suggest its popularity is actually fading.
Really?
Yeah, it's sometimes seen as like old-fashioned peasant food, maybe a bit too intense for modern tastes. It seems like a tradition many Norwegians are kind of quietly letting go of.
Which is the great paradox, isn't it? Because that leads to the American connection, while it might be declining back home.
It's had this huge revival overseas. It's become this incredibly potent cultural symbol for Norwegian Americans.
Especially where, like the Midwest.
Exactly. Minnesota, Wisconsin, places with big Scandinavian communities, places where maybe the history, the harsh winters, felt kind of familiar to their ancestors. For these communities, lutefisk became this really important link to their heritage, a cultural anchor.
So it's less about the food itself, maybe, and more about the identity.
I think so, yeah. Holding these lutefisk dinners is almost like a badge of honor, a way to perform that cultural connection. And often, the tradition seems stronger, the loyalty fiercer in these American communities than back in Norway now. It's this nostalgic, yearly ritual that ties people to their roots, even if the taste is challenging.
Yeah, they're celebrating the survival, the connection, maybe more than the actual flavor profile. Okay, so if you listening right now are feeling adventurous, maybe you want to connect with that heritage or you're just, a culinary thrill seeker, the sources do give some pretty crucial cooking tips because this is definitely not a fish you can just wing it with. Patience and technique are key.
Oh, absolutely key, mostly because it's so chemically fragile after the lye treatment. First step, that rehydration and desalting soak. You have to soak the lutefisk you buy, usually comes partially prepared in fresh salted water, for a good 24 to 48 hours.
Salted water. Interesting.
Yeah, it helps draw out any remaining lye and really mellows out that very distinct aroma. It's essential.
Okay, and then cooking. You said you can't just boil it?
No, definitely not. The sources strongly recommend gentle oven baking, about 180 Celsius, that's 350 Fahrenheit, for maybe 25 to 30 minutes.
And why baking specifically?
Because the lye has already done so much work breaking down the proteins. If you boil it aggressively, it often just disintegrates, falls apart into this kind of soapy, unappetizing mush. Baking helps it hold its shape, keeps some flake integrity, which is hard enough as it is.
Gotcha. And for the full, authentic vibe, what do you serve it with?
Tradition calls for mashed peas. Sometimes they're sweetened, which is interesting, definitely potatoes, and crucially, lots and lots of melted butter. Or sometimes bacon fat.
Ah, fat. Makes sense.
Yeah, that richness cuts through the sharpness, that slightly caustic edge from the lye, and helps with the unique texture. Makes it much more palatable and true to how it was likely eaten historically.
Right. So let's pull this all together. What does it all mean? We've traced this dried cod from being like Viking era economic fuel
Yeah.
through this really bizarre chemical process using lye, this dangerous substance,
hmm
to where it is now, this cultural bridge connecting immigrants back to a 500-year-old heritage, especially at Christmas. It's literally a fish revived by chemistry, moving way beyond just survival food to become this bold, maybe artistic, and definitely enduring holiday thing.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it? Given that this whole process involves taking something dangerous lye and using it to make food safe and edible, what other historical food techniques around the world relied on tackling natural barriers or even toxins, maybe using similar alkaline processes? Lutefisk really highlights this question about culinary ingenuity, how sometimes it means using chemistry to tame the seemingly impossible. It kind of connects to things like, say, nixtamalization in Mesoamerica, using alkaline water to process corn, unlocking nutrients. It begs the question, what else is out there born from mastering the dangerous?